This weekend, the first John Wick spin-off movie, Ballerina, dropped in theaters. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 5 movies in the John Wick verse, plus the Continental, from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 5 John Wick movies, plus the Continental if you have seen it. My list is not the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. And let's get started. Easily in last, the Continental. This is the John Wick prequel TV event. It's not quite a TV series, it's not a TV movie, it's something in the middle. It's 3 90-minute episodes about young Winston and kind of him getting pulled into the world of assassins and battling over the Continental, which is run by Mel Gibson. And I just don't think it ever really captures the magic. Like, in and of itself, it's not like overtly bad, but it's just also not that good or memorable. Best way to phrase this, I watched the first episode back when it first came out 2 years ago, and I didn't finally finish watching all of it until last night, and it took me several days to be able to plow through and watch just 3 episodes of this TV show, because it just never really hooked me. And it never really feels like it's the same world as the movies of John Wick. And I think some of that is just a little bit too much is different, where it's a new format. It's television versus movies. That means the production quality is a little bit smaller. We're set in the 1970s, so the time period is different. The pacing of everything is different. And so it just never quite convinces me that we are in an earlier version of what came before. And then I think even the bigger problem there is our lead character's Winston. And it's just hard to imagine that this is the younger version of the character that we know later on. It just doesn't. He doesn't feel like the same guy. There's not enough connective tissue or overt, like, phrases, quotes, speech patterns, anything to where it feels like I'm seeing younger version of him. Just feels like a totally different guy with the same name that eventually is going to end up running the Continental. And that's kind of the big problem. It just always feels off, not quite right, not quite engaging enough. It kind of has the quirky world of John Wick, but never as flashy or as exciting, as vibrant, anything like that. We get new characters that are these big, bold John Wick-verse type characters, but they feel a little bit too cartoonish and not like they fit nicely into the world the way they do in each of the movies. So, yeah, it also has the problem that most of the like Marvel, Disney Plus shows have, that they're the wrong length. That they neither have the brevity and focus of a movie or the depth of storytelling and character work that you get with a television show. It's kind of this compromised middle where the story feels stretched out and bloated, but not in the sense where we actually have a detailed, complicated story and interesting character arcs. It's just a movie that feels like it's much longer than it's supposed to be and has too much filler in it. That's ultimately the problem here. It doesn't feel like it matches. The characters don't feel quite right. And its formatting doesn't do it any favors. It doesn't have anything to offer that's interesting enough or good enough. So it's just this kind of bland addition to the universe. And it literally starts off with a young Winston crying. No one ever watched the John Wick movies and went, I wonder what Winston was like when he was a kid. And ultimately, it has that prequel problem of answering questions that nobody was asking. In 5th, John Wick Chapter 3, Parrabellum. To be perfectly clear, there is a huge gap between Continental and John Wick 3, whereas I don't really think Continental works particularly well, and I think John Wick 3 is a pretty great action movie. All the rest of the movies on this list kind of fall into that category of like, that's almost certainly one of the best action movies of the year that it came out. And I would say that certainly applies to John Wick Chapter 3. The way that each of the movies in the original run of John Wick films just cranked up the action, the stunt work with each new entry is pretty incredible. That this movie just kicks off and you have memorable fight in a library, memorable fight where they're breaking the cases and throwing things at each other, memorable fight where he's using horses, memorable fight where he's teaming up with Halle Berry and dogs, and you have this dog foo, and they just keep finding interesting new things to do with the stunt work, interesting new ways to show John Wick as the most innovative and deadly killer on the planet, and it just delivers on all of these different levels continuously. Now, it is in 5th place. You got to go, okay, why is it in 5th place when you think the action is so good? Well, all 5 of these movies have awesome action, so you can't just base it on that. Ultimately, the thing that holds this one back for me is that ever since I first watched it in the theater, I just went, oh, that's just not a very satisfying finale. That it just feels like a placeholder movie with awesome action in it, but the story doesn't really progress all that much with the film. Because at the beginning, John Wick is being chased by the table, and at the end of it, he's being chased by the high table. And so it doesn't feel like we've actually progressed anything. We've introduced adjudicators and his backstory, and like there's stuff that expands the lore, but the story, John's in the same place at the end that he was at the beginning. And that to me was like kind of, it always makes the movie feel a little bit like, oh. And in particular, you move into part 4 and it doubles down on that because Winston loses the plot of this movie is Winston loses and regains the Continental, and then at the beginning of the 4th movie, he loses it again. And so it just reiterates the fact that the previous movie wasn't particularly important to the plot, and John Wick doesn't do the stuff for the high table in part 3, and he goes after the Elder in the next one. So it feels like you, in certain ways, you could almost skip over part 3, and on a story level, it wouldn't really matter all of that much. The other one is one of the observations, a documentary came out called Wick is Pain, and talk about the creation of it. And they talk about the differences between the director. The first movie had 2 directors. David Leitch was the secret director, but the guild wouldn't allow them to credit 2 directors. So everybody knows, everyone acknowledges both of them directed the film. And they say that one of the differences between the 2 of them is
Dave had a much more grounded sensibility. I was influenced more by Tolkien and Japanese anime and manga. And Dave wanted to be more grounded, gritty, emotional. Oh, we gotta make it painful. And we landed in that sweet spot.
And you can see that when David left to go make his own movies and Chad was the sole director, they really doubled and tripled down on the lore. And I think in part 3, it starts to get a little bit self-indulgent and a little bit too, like, we're getting lost in the weeds, lost in the clouds here of our big foo-foo ideas, and then there's a marker, and then there's your ticket, and we're going to find the Elder who's above the table, and walk into the desert till the end of the world, and he will find you, and all of a sudden, the guy that's the most powerful guy in the world just sits in a tent in the middle of a desert. What does he do all day? I do not know, but he's just out in the desert all the time. They're a little bit too weird and trippy, or whatever they're going for, surrealist in our stories. There's a couple of the ideas I just wasn't particularly crazy about. In the end, I just didn't find it satisfying. Whereas like part 2 left on a cliffhanger, but there was a very specific conflict in the middle of it with this brother that's using him to try and get a seat on the hunt table. That the whole story of that is resolved, but the choice that John makes at the end of it leaves a cliffhanger to continue on. Whereas I just feel like the opening conflict from part 3 is still unresolved at the end of the movie. So it's just kind of this filler movie with awesome action. If you're talking about a filler movie, if you're going to do a filler movie, this is how you do it, because this is an awesome action movie. I just find the others more satisfying. Number 4, Ballerina. If you're going to do a John Wick spinoff, do Ballerina, don't do the Continental. I thought by the time the credits were rolling on this one, I was like, man, that movie kind of ruled. It is so much fun in the back half that it made up for some of the weaknesses in the first half of the movie. Now, I went into this movie a little bit skeptical for a variety of reasons. First off, that they hired Len Wiseman to direct the film. And I enjoy Len Wiseman's movies. It has been a while since he did one, but he's made a number of movies that I enjoyed. But when it comes to action movies, Chad delivered premium, groundbreaking action. And Len is like, yeah, he does good action. He does solid, good enough, maybe above average, versus the best. And so immediately you kind of you have a little bit of concern that will they be able to match the quality and innovativeness of what they did with the original films? And compound that, it's a movie that was delayed a full year to do reshoots. Now, they've kind of like, there have been conflicting reports and they've said different things, and you never really quite know exactly what to make of it and how much of it is true. But the initial reports were that they decided to do reshoots to punch up the action. Another report came out that Chad Stahelski did extensive reshoots and basically reworked the whole movie to bring it up to the quality of the John Wick films. And then later on, they said, no, that's not what happened. There was things that they just weren't able to shoot when they originally shot the movie because budget reasons. Chad was off making John Wick 4. And so afterwards, they had some things where they liked what they'd seen and they wanted to add certain things back in. The primary John Wick team was available and they showed up and they did additional filming and expanded filming, but not reshoots to fix the movie, just to expand the movie. What's true, I don't know. Maybe some point in time we'll get the exact truth to it. The final product that they produced, I think, when it gets going, is as good as the mainline John Wick films. And I think the film overall is a little bit better than John Wick 3 because at the end of it, I was satisfied. That's the difference. I left John Wick 3. Every time I leave John Wick 3 and I go, man, I wish they'd had a more satisfying ending that felt like we'd resolved something. Even if you end John Wick Chapter 3 the way that John Wick 4 ends, with John shooting the Elder, even that becomes a satisfying cliffhanger of something, but they didn't. And so it feels like an incomplete movie, whereas Ballerina, you get to the end of it, I was like, yeah, that was way better than I expected. That was the whole conversation in the parking lot with people when it was over. It was like, that was a lot better than I was expecting. That's a good way to end your film. So a big part of that is it has a straightforward revenge story, as most of these movies have, and they deliver these memorable John Wick-esque action sequences. The ice skating fight, the flamethrower fight, the grenade fight, and the kitchen fight, the one where she's outside of a car fight, the nightclub fight with all the ice. And they find a way to keep having action sequences with which you remember that one. There's a thing about it that makes it cut through. It's not just, oh, there was a cool fight in the middle of it. You're like, no, the one with the plates, the one with the grenades. And it's well done and memorable. It cuts through all the noise of action that's out there, and they keep delivering really cool stuff. Ana de Armas proved that she could do action back when she did No Time to Die. She trained for months to do this movie. You watch the movie and you see that. Like she feels like she's very competent and involved with the action set pieces. She's not just doing John Wick, but as a woman, she has her own fighting style that's a little bit more like grab whatever you can grab, stab their eye out. And the movie even kind of addresses that. I will say the first half of the movie does have a little bit of B-team energy to it. That, it's like the action was good, but not quite John Wick quality. And the sets weren't quite as interesting. It wasn't quite as flashy. But around the midpoint, it makes this turn when she goes off on her mission, and it kind of kicks into gear. And I was like, yes, this is awesome. So much so that when John Wick showed up, I kind of felt like he distracted from what I was excited about. I was like, of course it's great to see him. Of course it's great to see him shoot people in the face. But it also was a little bit of like, man, but I just want to get back to killing those guys. I don't need this side rabbit trail about John Wick over here. It's kind of like, that's a good sign that John Wick wasn't the best thing in the movie. He was a little bit of a rabbit trail in the middle of something I was very interested in. Also, both two kind of hurting the pacing a little bit, but also what made the movie interesting. It's a movie that has a much bigger scope and size to it because the John Wick movies kind of take place all like within a short window of time, this very like condensed period of time. And this one has two different time jumps in it. It montages through her training. And so it kind of has the bigger scope and size to it. And it's not as much as the other films, but it does expand the world of John Wick by having like this cult out there that's outside of them, but they have a treaty and everything like that. So for me, a movie that has some flaws, takes a little while to get going, but once it does, it absolutely delivered everything that I wanted and left me satisfied. In third place, John Wick Chapter 2. And honestly, this one and the next one on the list are kind of tied. They're each films that I think complement each other really well, have a lot to offer. Each of them are like, I really love this, and this about this one, but this one did this, and this really well. So there's not a this big distinction between numbers 2 and 3 on this list, whereas almost every other placement is very distinct. 2 and 3 are kind of tied. But the reason what I love about John Wick Chapter 2 is that they realized you can't just kill off another family member or another pet. You can't steal another car. And so it doesn't try to find another one of the just like primal revenge story to tell. So they doubled down on all of the other things that were great about the first movie. The world building, the lore, and the action and stunts. And with a bigger budget, they're able to tell this story with a bigger landscape to it, that we're traveling to more places with bigger sets, more expanded action set pieces, all tied to this more elaborate world.
He once killed 3 men in a bar.
With a pencil. I know, I've heard the story, sir.
With a fucking pencil!
And we're introducing markers and we're expanding, like someone did something for John that made it so he was able to get out, but that has a cost to it. Kind of really tying into the theme of the whole franchise of the choices and the consequences of those choices. And the thing that John had to do to get out has now come back and pulled him back in. And we're really getting into the high table and the bickering and bantering among them. And so it just makes the world of John Wick feel so much bigger, grander, and just shot kind of so wonderfully. It's kind of interesting in the Wick is Pain documentary, the writer, Derek Kolstad, kind of dives into it.
The first one, it was just a handful of people in the trenches. The second one, it was 1,000 people in the command center. But that was the hardest job I've ever had, was John Wick 2.
But that tension, the conflict, the back and forth, I think brought out great results. And they talk about in the documentary all these different things that they tried to do in making it. And I think ultimately they found the right story that feels like the natural extension of the previous movie. It's able throughout the movie to introduce kind of these personal like betrayal of John and like how angry he is that he's been pulled and forced to do something he doesn't want to do, only to be betrayed by that person, and that you target John Wick's wrath after him because of all of this. And just, it's a great example of how to do a sequel right, that doesn't rehash some of the plot of the first one, but expands all the other stuff. Our runner-up, the original John Wick. And if you weren't there back in 2014 paying attention when this film came out, it's very easy to forget that this movie came out of absolutely nowhere. Now, this is the premium Hollywood action franchise of the last decade. But there was no buzz whatsoever when they were making this film. They had trouble getting financing, where the financing got shut down, and quite literally at the last minute, Ava Longoria showed up and wrote them a check for $5 million so that they could make the film. Otherwise, it never would have happened. It was from 2 first-time directors who had done a bunch of stunt work that were completely unproven talent. It starred Keanu Reeves when he was in kind of a low point in his career. And then out of the blue, in the fall of 2014, this trailer comes out that it's about John Wick avenging his dead dog.
Because he stole John Wick's car, sir, and killed his dog.
Oh.
And everyone was like, what is this thing? I literally remember the day I first heard about this movie. It was when I was watching AMC Movie Talk with John Campea. That was I remember it. There's not a lot of times where you remember the first time you heard about a film, but it was so peculiar that they were doing this movie where Keanu Reeves is like avenging his dead dog that we were all talking about it. And the trailer actually looked kind of good. And then it came out, and it takes this classic revenge trope that we've seen this movie so many times before, and it's about a dead dog, and finds a way to just elevate it to this whole other level where it is just a revenge movie, but it has so much more style to it than it has any business having.
We saw John Wick as like this tiny little thing. No one's ever gonna see this thing, so fuck it. We'll just try some weird ideas. We'll use it like as a training exercise.
It has so much kind of more like the attention to the cinematography, the set design, the lighting is so far beyond what you would expect from a movie with this particular script. And this is another one where the guys that made the documentary that kind of dive into this, that Chad Stahelski and David Leitch showed up and they just had this very clear vision for how they wanted to make this elevated B movie.
We started to sort of build the world of John Wick in the way we saw it. Sort of visual minimalism and gun fu, sort of the love letter to graphic novels and anime. It was a lot more stylized than I think anyone saw on the page.
And they pulled it off. And they'd been developing certain action styles for several years. They talk about in the documentary that the John Wick kind of gun fu stuff was developed for the Jason Statham movie Safe, and Jason Statham basically shot it down. And that's why Keanu Reeves got it for John Wick. And they just tapped into something special, that it had like this nice dry sense of humor to it.
You working again?
No, just sorting some stuff out.
Oh, well.
It had fantastic choreography that was shot really cool, and all the little details that you're not supposed to pay attention to were so much better than they should have been. And you're like, you want to learn more about this hotel, the Continental, and you want to learn more about this world of assassins. Everything felt like it had a backstory, and everything looked so cool. And so suddenly this schlocky B movie about avenging your dog turned into something really special and built a great foundation for what became the premium Hollywood action franchise of the last decade. But coming in at number 1, John Wick Chapter 4. Chad Stahelski's action magnum opus. And in so many ways, this is kind of the peak of straightforward action. Now, action can be a very broad genre that can refer to a lot of different things, and you can have big sci-fi movies with action. What exactly do you mean? When I say straightforward action, I mean guy running around on the street with a gun, shooting people, punching people in the face, car chases, jumping out of windows, not big sci-fi action, not epic in that sense, but like of a straightforward revenge movie in certain regards. This is like the peak of the scope, size of just tremendous planning and plotting for the stunt work and choreography. That you had a hit movie franchise, and so they had the budget, the money, and the time to pull off something special. And when you are the top action franchise, when you're doing the best stuff in your industry, then all the best people want to work with you and join in on the fun and be a part of it. So all of a sudden, you have the resources, the time, and you're a magnet for talent. Everyone will tell you yes. Everyone is trying to get to be a part of your thing. And so you have the perfect environment to deliver something really special. And you get this movie where in the film, there's really kind of 3 big action set pieces: Japan, the nightclub, and then the final run to get to the duel. All 3 of them are shot in a way that they're extraordinarily difficult logistically speaking. Where the Japanese sequence, it's this massive set hotel that's gorgeous, perfect lighting, glass cases, intricate choreography. We got swords, nunchucks, blind guy, guns, bows and arrows, all this different stuff. You go to a nightclub, and it's this massively choreographed fight with big stunt work and hundreds of extras and water and things. Like, as soon as people are wet, as soon as you're getting people wet in an action set piece, it's really difficult because you can't dry a person off. You got to you do a lot of start over as soon as someone's wet. It's just so much detail to it. And then, of course, the finale of the film. There's a part that is 25 minutes straight of action involving cars in a very busy intersection. In Paris, you're talking about a long overhead shot that is unlike anything we've seen before, involving fire And then this very long fight on a staircase and falling down an awful lot. Each one of those would normally be this awesome set piece, and they're stacked right on top of each other. All of it intricately choreographed, all of it doing unique, distinct things in each environment, and all of it groundbreaking. And having just the right amount of the lore expansion and finding a way to kind of come to a conclusion and end to it, where you feel like some of the corruption of the High Devil is being defeated, you're being pushed back, they're being put in their place, you're having victory, and of course having a kind of finality to the idea of actions have consequences and where will John Wick's quest end. Introducing new awesome side characters like Kane, and just finding all the little nice little details with the tracker with the dog. And so it's just action at the highest level with so many resources to be able to shoot it. And all these environments just look awesome.
John Wick is a franchise that's dripping with tone. And it's that Sergio Leone, like, take your time, move through the scene.
And they talked about how this is the film in the franchise that's the most like anime. And
4 is I'm most proud of because it's the most anime with framing, composition, depth of field.
Little detail, like when every shot is just framed just right to have just gorgeous imagery to it. Just as a still frame, it's a great image. It's a great picture, but it's also awesome motion pictures. Pictures in motion with amazing choreography inside of those moving pictures. So it just works on every single level and delivers at the highest level. And so to me, it takes everything great about the previous movies and takes it just to that higher level. So it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, I've got other awesome videos just like it. You can check them out right over there. I don't even know what it's recommending to you. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV.